Welcome to the Rum Revival. My name is Arminder, and today I'm highlighting a number of newly released and newly announced rums from the last month or so. Now, some of these rums have only just come out, so it might take a few weeks or maybe months before they're available throughout the country, but definitely keep an eye out for them. Let's start off with the newest release in Hampden Estate's annual Great House series. This is the 2024 release. Each year's release is a different blend of Hampden's various marks. For the last couple of releases, Hampden hasn't exactly shared which marks make up the blend, at least not publicly, but various people on the internet seem to know, and it looks like the consensus is that 50% of this year's blend is the LFCH mark distilled in 2021, and then 20% is LFCH again, but from 2020, 15% is the HGML mark from 2018, and lastly, the final 15% is DOK from 2021. Now, don't quote me on any of that, it's just what I've read on the internet. Now, as with all of their rums, this release is wild fermented and distilled on a double retort pot still. This particular release is bottled at 57% ABV, and I've seen it priced anywhere from $130 to $145. Now, as you can see here, I have a bottle of it, but I haven't really had a chance to spend any significant time with this because someone had the bright idea of drinking a shit ton of zombies before Halloween. So yeah, I got a little catching up to do. Now, if you're curious about the previous Great House releases, last year I did a blind tasting of the last 4 releases, which you can check out in this video right here. Next up, we have 3 new entries in Lemison and Vellier's Flag series. Now, the series is described as a rum collection that celebrates bottlings from all around the world. Essentially, it's a bunch of single cask releases, and all the labels for these releases have these really cool, deconstructions of the flags of the countries of origin. Now, last year we got the Guyana release and the Trinidad release, and that Trinidad was my favorite rum of last year. This year we've got Cambodia, Fiji, and Jamaica. First up is the Cambodia 2016. This is a pot still rum from Samai Distillery out in Phnom Penh. They use molasses made from locally sourced sugarcane. The rum was first aged in Cambodia for 5 years in an ex-bourbon cask, and then another 3 years in Europe. A total of 205 bottles were produced, and it's bottled at 48.7% ABV. Next up, we have the Fiji 2012 from South Pacific Distilleries. This is a molasses-based pot still rum aged 2 years in Fiji in an ex-bourbon cask, and then another 10 years in Europe. It's bottled at 64.5% ABV with a total of 241 bottles produced. Next up, we have the Jamaica 2015. This is a Worthy Park rum made from their own molasses. It's long fermented, it's pot distilled, it's aged 1 year in Jamaica in an ex-bourbon cask, and then another 8 years in Europe. Bottled at 60.4% ABV, and 237 bottles have been produced. Now, I don't have prices for any of these yet, as they don't look like they've quite hit the market just yet, but they have been announced, and according to Lemison and Vellier, they should be available any day now. Next up is the newest release in Brugal's Colección Visionaria series. This is the Edicion 2. Now, the previous release, the Edicion 1, used what Brugal calls their aromatic cask toasting technique, where they sourced local cacao beans and toasted them inside new European oak casks. The idea being that the toasting of the beans inside the wood would infuse the wood with some of their aroma or oils, I guess, maybe, and that would then affect the flavor of any rum aged within those barrels. Now, with this new release, they're using the same technique, but instead of cacao beans, they're using locally sourced Arabica coffee beans and toasting them in new French oak casks. Now, after that toasting, they toss out the beans and do whatever with those, and then what they do is then finish some undescribed rum for some undescribed amount of time in those casks. Now, since it's Brugal, it's at least molasses-based, and we know it's column distilled. Now, this release is bottled at 45% ABV and priced at $100. Next up, we have a bunch of new releases from Myers with the launch of 2 new collections. The first collection is their signature Legends collection, which is described as, quote, a curated collection of rare, limited release rums that showcase innovative techniques and collaborative blends crafted in partnership with industry legends, unquote. Now, the first release in this collection is Legacy Blend No. 1, which is a collaboration with Richard Seal, Master Distiller, Master Blender of Foursquare in Barbados. Now, this is a blend of Jamaican rum, presumably Myers, and Foursquare rum. It's bottled at 47% ABV and priced at $49.99 for a $7.50 bottle. The next collection is a signature cask collection, which features 5 different releases. Now, each is priced at $80 for a $7.50. Now, these 5 expressions take Myers' original dark rum and finish them in barrels that were previously used for aging whiskey from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Now, I guess BTAC, as it's known, is kind of a big deal. The kids go crazy for it, apparently. Anyways, both Buffalo Trace and Myers are owned by Sazerac, so this is definitely some corporate synergy stuff going on. Now, the first expression is finished in George T. Stagg barrels, which is a 15-year-old barrel-proof bourbon. At least that's what the internet tells me. This release is bottled at 50% ABV. The next expression is finished in William LaRue Weller barrels. It's a 12-year-old wheated bourbon. Again, what the internet tells me. This release is bottled at 41.5% ABV. Then we have one finished in Sazerac Rye 18-year-old barrels, and it's bottled at 43% ABV. The next one is finished in Thomas H. Handy Sazerac Rye barrels, which is a 6-year-old unfiltered rye, and this is bottled at 42.25% ABV. And the last one is finished in Eagle Rare 17-year-old barrels, which is a Kentucky straight bourbon, and this one is bottled at 43% ABV. You know, it's kind of weird to me that only one of these finishes is at 100 proof and the rest are all like a little over 80, but like the price for all of them is all the same. What's going on with that? And also, if you're a whiskey head and you're watching, I'm curious, of those 5 whiskeys, which one is like the biggest deal, you know, the one that people go the most crazy over? Next up, we have batch 2 of Rolling Fork's Amburana Odyssey, a rum that they had first released last year. This batch is a blend of 6 casks of 9-year-old pot calm Foursquare rum. The folks at Rolling Fork let that rum age 6 months in Amburana oak casks and then for some amount of time in 15-year-old wheated Kentucky bourbon casks for some additional finishing. Now those casks were then blended together and bottled at 59.15% ABV and should be priced around $100. If you're not familiar with Amburana, it's a Brazilian wood that imparts these warm, savory, woody cinnamon notes. Now I have the first batch right here and I really like it, but it is very heavy on that cinnamon, like cinnamon cake, cinnamon frosting, kind of like a cinnamon roll really. Now according to Rolling Fork, batch 2 has a sweeter profile since it was finished in those wheated bourbon casks, unlike the batch 1 here, which had some additional finishing in some low char, heavy toast, rye casks, and bourbon casks. Next up, we have another El Dorado release selected by online retailer Seelbach. Now, last month I'd covered the 8-year-old El Dorado release that they put out, and this month they have a 9-year-old special barrel select. Now, it's bottled at 56.8% ABV, and there are a total of 210 bottles released. And that's all I know, and that's also all the folks at Seelbach know as well. I guess they asked about which marks or stills this rum was made on, but they haven't heard from Demerara distillers, so there's not a whole lot to go on. Beyond that, the price tag is $89.99, and I'll link to it in the description down below. Next up, we have the first release in Equiano's Legacy Blend Series. This is Ominira. Now, as with the original Equiano release, this is a blend of Foursquare rums aged in ex-bourbon casks and rums aged in ex-cognac casks from Gray's Distillery out in Mauritius. Now, while the original doesn't list any age statements, the rums in this release have all been aged a minimum of 11 years. They're blended together and then finished in some sherry casks. Now, the rum is bottled at 52% ABV and it's priced at $179.99 for a 700 milliliter bottle. Now, I've yet to see it on any store shelves, but it is currently available through Equiano's website. Now, I really like the original Equiano. I think it is one of the more enjoyable 43% ABV sipping experiences in the rum world. So to get one with more age and higher proof, yeah, I am tempted. Moving on, we have 2 new releases from new rum brand Rum It All. This is the variable dunderclap. Now, if you're not familiar with the brand, the mastermind behind Rum It All is Robin Smith from the This Blog's Neat YouTube channel. She makes her rum at Dead of Night Distillery down in LA. Her first releases were still strength and proof down expressions of Baseline, a unaged double pot distilled molasses based rum. Now, the idea behind these 2 new variable releases is to take one element of the Baseline rum and make a change to it to see how that production variable affects the final rum. Now, with dunderclap, Robin has replaced some of the water with some dunder, and dunder is the leftover remains of previous distillations. It's full of dead yeast cells, unfermented sugars, and all sorts of other goodies that can help increase the production of esters. As with Baseline, this set of releases is fermented 17 to 23 days using a distiller's yeast strain, and then it's double pot distilled at 75% ABV. Now, that still strength version is priced at $48 for a 375 milliliter bottle, and then the proof down 49% version is $54 for a 750. Now, if you want even more detail on the rum, check out Robin's video here where she does a full deep dive into the whole process and everything about the rum that you would want to know. Next up, we have a new release from Alambique Serrano out of Mexico. This is a brand that primarily features aged cane juice rums made by the Crassel family out in Oaxaca. This release is their blend number 6, Otono. As with all of their releases, this is made from the Java cane varietal that's grown around the region of Santa Maria Talistoc in Oaxaca. The cane juice is naturally fermented in stainless steel tanks. So this particular release is a blend of unaged and aged rums. 34% of it is unaged Crassel calm distilled rum. The remaining 66% is Crassel calm distilled rum that have been aged 29 months in ex-bourbon casks and then finished in American and limousine oak barrels. Now, this rum is described as having an explosion of holiday baking spices, anise, cardamom, allspice, cinnamon, and ginger. And that sounds amazing, especially this time of the year. I will say the previous blend, blend number 5, which is actually a store exclusive to Prizefighter Bar and Bottle Shop in Emeryville here in the Bay Area, also to me very much is like an explosion of holiday baking spices, and I absolutely love and adore that bottle, and I'm very excited to see blend number 6 kind of do something similar. Now this release is bottled at 55.8% ABV, and in total 740 bottles have been produced. And lastly, we have the first releases from a brand new distillery out in Sicily. It's Distileria Alma, and the brand is Matir. Now what's exciting here is that their rums are made from sugarcane juice, and anytime you can get cane juice rums from a country or region that you don't usually associate with cane juice or just rum in general, well, that's cause for excitement. Now the owners of Alma and Matir started growing sugarcane back in 2021, and they now have 3 unaged releases. The first is made solely from a purple cane varietal, and it's fermented from 72 to 96 hours and double pot distilled and bottled at 54% ABV and priced around $65. Now the second release is made from a yellow cane varietal, and it's also fermented from 72 to 96 hours, and it's single pot distilled this time, and it's bottled at 52.8% ABV and priced around $65. Now the third release is a blend of those 2 varietals, and it's bottled at 54% ABV and priced at $55. So I had a small taste of both the purple and the yellow varietals at the end of San Francisco Rum Fest a couple of months back. And actually the festival had ended and all the booths were packing up or had already packed up, and folks were leaving. Now as I was leaving, Chris from Spaghetti Western, the importer of the brand, asked if I wanted to try the rums, and I was like, yeah. So we did a quick tasting outside the venue. Now I thought the yellow was good, but the purple really jumped out as something special. Now it was only 1 sip, and I did already have a lot to drink that day, so you kind of have to take all of that with a grain of salt, but I just remember really enjoying that purple. Now the most memorable thing about the whole tasting was that while we were doing all this, like right behind me, like 10 feet behind me, was a guy who was sitting on a bench just throwing up like non-stop, presumably from all the rum that he had at the festival. And what was great about all of that was like he wasn't like hiding off to the side to throw up, like trying to be discreet. He was straight up, like in the middle of this main thoroughfare that you had to walk past him as you were leaving the festival, and he was just doing his thing. And the best thing was, it looked like there wasn't an ounce of shame on his face, like his chin was held up high, and it's almost as if he was making eye contact with everyone as they were walking past him, just ah. And I was looking at him like, damn dude, good on you. Not an ounce of shame on your face, totally owning this whole thing that's happening to you. I think that's commendable. Anyways, I am now always going to think about that guy throwing up whenever I think of Matir, which I'm sure Chris and the brand are super happy to hear. All right, so there you go. Those are the newly released or newly announced rums from the last month or so. Do any of them stand out to you? Are you planning on getting any of them? I'd love to know, so let me know in the comments down below. And if you're interested in some exclusive behind-the-scenes content and first impressions videos where I try rums for the very first time and give you my gut reaction to them, then consider checking out my Patreon page. Tons of content there that I think you'll really like. Thanks so much for watching. Catch y'all later. Cheers.